Hi everyone, my name is Armine Bazikyan, and this month I wanted to discuss the topic of choosing a trustee for your trust. So how do you go about selecting the person or the company or institution that you're going to name as trustee of a trust that you have? And that all goes back to understanding what a trustee is and what their job is going to be so that you can make the right decision. So we've discussed in previous videos the role of a trustee and what a trustee is, but I'll do a little refresher here. So a trustee is essentially a person that is holding on to your assets for the benefit of another person. So if John sets up a trust, he names a friend as trustee to hold on to his assets for the benefit of his daughter. So the trustee is a fiduciary role. They don't hold the assets for themselves. They hold it and safeguard it for someone else. So that's a key role that they play within the entire trust framework. So a trustee is essentially a person that is safeguarding and holding things for the benefit of another person. So understanding who they are and what they do really helps individuals in selecting a trustee. The trustee's role may be different depending on the type of trust that they are the trustee of. So for example, if you have named a friend to be your trustee after your death, their job will be different from a trust wherein you're naming a friend to be trustee now while you are alive. So depending on the type of trust, their actual everyday, day-to-day work is different and their responsibilities are different. So a lot of times you can name a trustee to be your successor, meaning once you create a trust, you are your own trustee and the person that you name comes only after you're gone. You can have two spouses be trustees together, co-trustees, and when one of them is gone, the other person is the survivor. You can name a trustee to be the trustee for your young children. You can have a trustee for an irrevocable trust. It all depends on the particular scenario, but the role and their tasks change. But the overarching job that they have is to safeguard everything, invest it properly, act the way a prudent investor would act in that scenario. So, if there's a wad of cash in your estate and your trust, we want to make sure that the trustee doesn't just pop it into a savings account, but rather they take that money and they invest it into either an investment property or an investment account, something that generates income. So they need to treat all of these assets like an investor would, and they need to generate income from it. They can't just lay all the assets and just make sure that they're safe and no one takes them. So that's one of their roles. Another role is to obviously safeguard it, to insure it, to make sure that it's not taken away from the beneficiary, that it is given to the beneficiary when you've asked them to give it to the beneficiary. So if you have a discretionary trust in place that allows a distribution to a child at a certain age, they are the ones that will take that money and give it to your child at that age. They're the ones responsible for that. So that's the job that they have. They will provide an accounting to the beneficiary, so they have to be able to account for their actions and for where they spent the money and all of that. So they essentially have to be a responsible human being. Now, who can be your trustee is different, right? So it all depends on your particular situation. So some people have reliable, trustworthy, financially savvy members of their life that they can name. So either they have a friend or a family member who they trust 100% to be in this role. A lot of times, people do not have this individual in their life. So a lot of times, if people don't have family or friends they trust, or if they don't have anyone near in proximity, it becomes difficult for them to name an individual. So a lot of times, rather than naming family members or friends, individuals will actually name a corporate trustee, which is essentially an institution that steps in to be your trustee, or a private fiduciary to be your trustee, which is essentially a private fiduciary is an individual whose job it is to be trustee. They are the trustees of multiple trusts all over, and that's their day-to-day job. So you hire them to be your trustee. So it all depends on your particular scenario. Depends on the type of trust as well. So once you've selected the type of trust or what you're working with, that's when you can actually select the right person to fit that role. Once you've selected the trustee, you want to make sure, obviously, that you understand the ramifications of selecting a corporate trustee and a private fiduciary. So a lot of times when you select someone that is in these roles, it comes with a price tag, right? So these people work for money. They don't just become your trustee for the fun of it. A private fiduciary charges a fee, so does a corporate trustee, and the fees might vary. But regardless, the fees are usually reasonable for the amount of work that they have to do, and a lot of times couples and individuals find themselves in a scenario where they absolutely don't have anyone in their lives that they would trust with these types of assets. So they rather have a little bit of the trust money going to these private fiduciaries and make sure that the job is done correctly than to trust a son or daughter who has some financial problems themselves, or is not very good with money, or is not very financially savvy, or is irresponsible. So those are kind of the reasons why people will lean towards a private fiduciary versus a family member. But it is something to consider, but you need to be aware that it does come with a fee. That's not to say that naming a friend or a family member as trustee simply means that they do the job for free. Those individuals can also take a fee from your trust, depending on what you draft, what you want in there. But for the most part, they could also do it for free, which would save the beneficiaries lots of money. Regardless of these roles, so once you've actually established what type of trust you want to implement and what role these people are going to play within that trust, and what their responsibilities are based on the type of assets, you'll be able to better coordinate and select a trustee that would be fit for this role. And in doing so, you'll take into consideration numerous factors, some of which will include their financial savviness. Their organizational abilities will be key. How responsible they are will be an extra component that I think everyone should consider when selecting a trustee. And you want to make sure that these people will be able to do the job, meaning they will be able to coordinate and work with an attorney. They will be able to understand some of the legalese. They have had a home that they've sold and been in escrow before, for example. So if you're naming a 19-year-old who's never gone through the escrow process as trustee, you have to be aware that this person's not going to have any experience within an escrow process in California. So it might be difficult for them to sell one of your properties and distribute proceeds. So these are the things that you should take into consideration, is having the trustee have actual life experiences that would benefit the trust, that would come into play once they are taking on this role. But it is a very specific question that's specific to your needs. So depending on what type of trust you're selecting and what role these people are going to be playing based on the assets, those conversations are going to be what leads you to actually selecting the right individual for the role. So as always, feel free to consult with our office. We'd be happy to sit down with you and have a discussion about all these things and the type of individuals that are in your life to see if they are a good fit. And if they're not, we'd always be happy to recommend you to great professional fiduciaries and corporate trustees that we work with to help you get the right person in place. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.